Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. I see that some have already joined, and I'm sure that more will be trickling in as the next few minutes pass by. But we're going to just go ahead and get started while we're waiting with some quick introductions. I'm going to introduce myself, Darrow, and of course my esteemed colleague Noa Bradley here. But for those who don't know, Darrow's legal intelligence company that helps plaintiffs' attorneys detect, act upon, and litigate impactful cases in a variety of practice areas. I'm sure if you go on our website, you'll see the vast array of kind of spaces that we're involved in. But the topic today, obviously, is greenwashing electricity space. And I am Patrick Robichaud. I'm a legal consultant here at Darrow. Before I came to Darrow, I graduated law school from Indiana University School of Law. Go Hoosiers for those of you who are college football fans, of course. After that, I clerked for a federal magistrate judge for 2 years in the Northern District of Illinois. Thereafter, I came back out to this coast. I was a defense side litigator for Fried Frank for approximately 3 years. After that, decided to join Darrow. Wanted to get more so into the legal tech space and kind of move the ball forward a little bit in a positive direction to the extent I saw it. But that's me in broad strokes. And Noah, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Patrick. And hi, everyone. Very excited to have you all with us today. My name is Noa Bradley, and I'm a legal intelligence analyst in the environmental team at Darrow, leading the greenwashing space. And actually, a very cool stuff about me is that my background is actually laid in both. I hold both LLB, law degree, and environmental science degree from the Jerusalem University, Israel. Yeah, this is me.
So thank you, Noah. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. We'll talk about two major topics today, but all of them kind of focus around the title of the program. Greenwashing in the energy space. In broad strokes, I'll kind of give a kind of an overview on the legal side of what this greenwashing topic is in general, and then try to drill down a little bit into what we're talking about with what we see as kind of an emerging opportunity really for plaintiff side lawyers to kind of get into the space on the ground level with respect to green energy claims. So, obviously many of you watching today are lawyers, so you'll be familiar with the term greenwashing, but again, in broad strokes, what we're talking about are claims by companies that their practices and, whatever services they provide, the products they make, are done in an environmentally sound way in whatever capacity that may be. So carbon neutral claims, for instance, companies representing to consumers that the things that they make are done in a sustainable way. Now, where this greenwashing kind of claim or term comes from, it's kind of like whitewashing, right? They're saying that they're doing these things, but in reality, when you kind of peel this back, they aren't. And so, as again, many lawyers here in the audience today may think false claims, misrepresentation, deceptive trade practices. That's kind of what we're talking about here from a legal standpoint, right? When we're talking specifically about what we see as an emerging trend or an opportunity is with respect to energy claims. So as one may say, oh, I'm making a widget and I'm doing so in a carbon neutral fashion. Many energy companies have kind of jumped on this bandwagon as well. And saying that with respect to how they produce energy. I produce energy, but X percent is put towards renewable sources. Or if you pay me a premium for every quartile of energy that you may use, we'll invest that money to go to renewable programs in your location. The problem here, and Noah, you may want to jump in to kind of give your thoughts on this, is that in some instances they're not doing that, or in some instances they're not very clear to consumers, why or how this is happening, or if it's happening at all. Really, it's kind of the promise of these things to rent seek, get extra money from consumers, and potentially not giving anything back. But, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to emphasize three of the main stuff you were mentioning, that is important to understand about those offering of these energy companies, and that they basically offer for clients to A, pay a premium price, B, get in return an actual green product, which is a renewable energy portfolio delivered to your home. And three, you get like benefits of renewable energy in your state. So I think we know that utilities green power programs sold directly to consumer a green product, which is unique from what we are usually seeing greenwashing litigation. Because usually we will see a claim that a certain bottle is carbon neutral, but the consumer paid for a bottle and also have some benefits of attribute of environmental aspects, which are good. But the main product is not a green product, is a bottle of water. And here we see, and that's why also why we are thinking it's an emerging field, we see that the offering of the program is an actual product that is green, and like people are paying price for it exactly. And I think that's why we are also like to view that as the next big thing in greenwashing, as it's there is a direct connection here between what the consumer paid, what he think he's paying for, and what he received. And back for what you're asking, so yeah, utility green power program sold directly to consumers, and you get it. Okay, like supposedly you get a promised impact from your investment, from your money, but the impact is depends usually on how the sourcing of those renewable energy electricity looks like.
Right, and let me just interrupt you briefly because I can just say from experience colloquially, like I've received these offers from my energy provider, right? Like I've seen these. I'm sure many who are in the audience have seen these too. It's essentially saying, pay a little bit extra, and we'll either source energy that's renewable or invest it in some way in which will benefit the environment. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to kind of put it in context of what consumers might be seeing.
For sure. So I agree. Usually the case would be that the consumer think based on their representation that they're buying clean energy. But what usually the case is that they're actually buying, and the utilities companies are not very sharing this information. What they're buying is actually a clean paperwork that in many cases might not be represent an additional renewable energy that is occurring, and what consumer will usually be thinking that is going on. And in order to understand what I was just saying, maybe to drill down on some two main terms we need to understand that are related to this sphere. So the first thing I want to address is that the way renewable energy generation is being tracked in the US is by a mechanism that's called renewable energy certificates. And those, shortly, you can say RECs. And REC is basically a certificate that says that 1 MWh of electricity was generated somewhere. And first thing, important thing to know about RECs, that they can be sold separately from the electricity itself. So you have electricity that have been generated, you have a certificate that represent that generation, but they are going elsewhere, and their ways are going into separate ways. So this is the part where the confusion is starting, because already here people think they're buying renewable energy, but they actually buying standard grid electricity that will anyway be delivered to their home, plus a
Right.
certificate that is represent electricity that's happening elsewhere.
Right. And if you tie this back to kind of generally what the standards are in pretty much every jurisdiction that we're talking about here, under like the false ad statutes and the kind of misrepresentation statutes, the standard is almost always, what a reasonable consumer would be thinking when they read whatever the representation might be, right? So in these cases, and I think what you're referring to is, saying saying that your investment or your extra money is going toward renewable energy isn't quite the same as what you are suggesting and what you are saying, which is there seems to be an entire market of these certifications that again aren't tied really to where an individual may be, where they live, the energy they draw upon. they're kind of disconnected.
Exactly that, and maybe into putting that into simple word and to frame that. So a consumer that is part of these programs can actually buying a fossil fuels electricity that was generated in his state, in his usual grid is connected to, and plus he's paying for a REC that was originally generated in a complete different state, and also, which is maybe even more absurd, was generated 3 or 4 years ago, because this is a market that take time to sell those credits. So what it potentially means legally is that claim can become misleading, but depending on how RECs are sourced, marked, and what consumer reasonably think they represent. So when you say stuff like, and this is a true example for marketing materials of utilities companies, when you say stuff like powering your home with renewable energy and join your neighbors in making California more renewable, and the underlying program is relying on RECs that are sourced from wind energy program in Texas from 2 years ago. I'm not saying is not allowed. I'm not saying there's something doing illegal. It's not that. They're just misleading the people.
Right.
Uh, and
The
that's
issue
important.
is the disclosure to the reasonable consumer, right? What are you supposed to take on the face of these representations? What would a normal person in like or similar search situations kind of glean from that? And to your point, the fact that these, I think, unbundled RECs, these RECs that aren't tied to a specific place, it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with them from a legal perspective. There's entire market, they can be bought and sold, etc.
They
But
allow they are regulated for sure.
right, exactly. So they exist and they are okay. The issue arises when enterprising energy company may want to, I don't know, grease the wheels a little bit, suggest things by these representations that may not really be happening in terms of what's happening in your area and the energy you are actually using on a day-to-day basis. And that's kind of where these claims we think are going to be kind of a bigger thing as time progresses.
Exactly. And maybe just a bit more additional information about that, but I don't want to read much about it. But one of the main aspects that, and the common consensus about those unbundled RECs, that due to oversupply and this unregulated market, and it's resulted in a very, very cheap prices for those unbundled RECs, that
Mhm.
make it very appeal for those utilities companies to use. Because when utility company offer an option for renewable energy generation for clients, they have two options. They have one option, which is the expensive one, is to actually deliver more renewable energy to the grid, which means basically source more, like generate more and build more renewable energy sources. So that's the expensive options, but they can buy in prices that are even lower than the premium price that the consumer pay for. They can buy those unbundled RECs, basically change nothing in their operation, but to deliver those green program and to get money from clients on actually not doing so much.
Right.
That's an important aspect of this sphere.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. And I did want to say that again, we think this is an emerging field. There aren't many cases out there right now. I keep my ear to the ground on this. We here at Darrow do as well. There's one case out in Oregon called Bloom v. Northwest. It's percolating. It's the most similar, I would say, to what we're getting at here. Kind of very bold claims about the state of how renewable gas is, which is kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from the theory we're discussing here. But it's passed motion to dismiss. There's an appeal pending. But we really do think that, the nature of these claims and greenwashing in general, we only see opportunity here, particularly because, again, how is a reasonable consumer going to know specifically that when you say your house is being powered by green energy, you're right? Again, you have to put yourself in the average person's mind. From what you're telling me, like before we kind of got into this area, I wouldn't have known what this stuff is, right? And I'm some may say or argue that I'm a sophisticated guy. But if you're just someone paying your energy bill, how are you supposed to know? And again, if we're turning back to greenwashing, the whole point of this is that people want to see good. They want to try to minimally help the environment if they can. And that's kind of the promise here. And, why we think that these claims are only going to grow, because there's really a premium here that businesses can charge for these promises.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was actually going around the office before starting this webinar, just talking with people about, they're asking what's the webinar is about. I'm just explaining to the ones from other teams what this sphere is about. And they were very surprised to even find out that the person using for these programs are not actually delivering like green energy to their like they didn't even understand the thing that you cannot send one electron there and one electron out there. So even for people working on those spheres, it is very hard to understand what the program is actually capable to doing, and when the representation are so far from what the product is definitely much more hard for consumer and even for lawyers to understand what's stand behind those programs. And maybe I think that's a great shift for our new talk is how tech and new capabilities help us uncovering those type of cases.
Yep, you beat me to it. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this because you're more steeped in the tech side than I am. But I can say in broad strokes, a lot of this information kind of is extant, and it's with respect to many of the cases that Darrow, kind of is able to identify. It's just how do you use tools and technology to not only gather this data but analyze it in a way that makes sense, such that a lawyer, for instance, doesn't have to go out on their own and spend tons of man hours that you could otherwise be using, doing what you want to do, litigating cases. And instead of spending your time kind of finding cases, which is usually the problem, particularly with some of these more nuanced claims and data, that there's massive amounts of data. We're kind of in a different world where plaintiffs' lawyers, 20, 30 years ago, you kind of wait for a case to walk through the door, or you're just kind of reading the news and seeing what hits you. But tell me how, in this case, we're kind of using technology to find these things.
Yeah, so it actually fits well to what you mentioned. So technology helps us here in two venues. One is potentially clear the noise and finding those cases using technology. And then when doing that, not only finding those cases, but do these cases with much more better evidence access and in much quicker way. So that's actually the two main aspects I wanted to talk about. But let's back to our study case. So historically, these cases were hard to cover, right? This offering of green utilities program is not that new. It is getting much more volume right now, but some program has been exist for 20 years now. But historically, it was hard to uncover and to take into litigation because you couldn't really understand what's going on. Why is it so hard to take that into litigation? I think the main aspect is that, relative to what you say, Patrick, is that the litigation here involved a lot of different aspects of evidence footprints. We are evolving here with marketing materials and filing reports and REC's registries and consumer behaviors and stuff. So we have a bunch of lots of data points across different many fields. And you just need to connect them all together, which is usually how we do stuff in Darrow. We connect the dots and uncover something that otherwise wouldn't have been uncovered. And specifically, I think we can categorize the technology we use in those specific cases into two main aspects.
Right.
Of them are under surprise, AI technologies. But I think if we want to discuss specifically on finding and writing, finding the evidence for these cases, two main tools are the one that most help in this sphere. So one is LLMs, which we know what it is, a subset of AI, and specifically LLM have like immense capabilities around document intelligence, deep reading, analyzing huge amount of volumes of data, in our case, filings of utilities companies, to understand exact how RECs have been used, when, to what cost, and how much, putting together.
Right. And I want to interrupt you briefly just to put a finer point on that because, many when the AI kind of stuff started to come out, and some had speculated out there that AI, is meant to replace the work that lawyers do. And I think, in my opinion personally, but also, the company here, Darrow, the belief isn't that AI is to replace, the creativity and the work that lawyers do litigating cases. What it's meant to do is to help litigators actually litigate cases instead of spending time and effort that they could be using to litigate cases to actually, find cases, which is usually the biggest kind of sticking point for firms out there, plaintiff side firms just trying to move the ball forward in a positive direction. AI can facilitate doing the work that you actually want to do. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, that's exactly true, and you phrased that very well. And that's mainly very answer to the second aspect of technology I want to discuss with is that you're right. In the regular play, we lawyers waiting for someone to knock our door and say, "Hey, I think I'm being misled by this company. Can you check it out?" But no. The reason AI can help us here in order to bring much more cases to life and not depend on those consumers is that AI have crazy potential and power, evolving web intelligence and
Right.
business intelligence. And when a law firm and a plaintiff law firms, an attorney know how to use it right, to know what to look at, to where to look, how to look, and to guide the AI what the right course of action to do here, those amount of footprints evidence in the digital footprint can just being uncovered, instead of just waiting this guy knocking on my door.
Right.
So take those both down, specifically on our greenwashing utilities companies, green program litigation. Two of those stuff are very helpful. One is the LLMs used for drilling down in filings. This is after you find the case, right? But you need to find the evidence to prove your case, and the LLMs do that. With the LLMs, you can do that in much more profound, easy, in grounded way. And yes, AI give us the tools to scrape web, to check company materials of marketing, to check consumer behavior, even comments in Reddit in scales, and connect them to a specific company program. So yeah, those two definitely change the rules of the game in this litigation, in other spheres as well.
Fascinating stuff. I think we've had a really, really good discussion here today. We've talked about greenwashing of these energy companies. I do want to take a few minutes to answer a couple of questions in the last few minutes that we have. We probably have time for one or two. So I'll just dive in and start reading and see if we can answer some of these. So the first one that I have here, kind of similar to what we were just talking about, but it's always good to think about it again. How's technology and data tools changing the feasibility of bringing the cases? In terms of IDing targets, validating claims, scaling litigation that would have been too complex a few years ago. So, listen, we just talked about this, so I don't know how much more we can add, but I'll just say it again, right? These tools are able to look at footprints, as you put it, Noah, a lot of different data points, because as we know, there's a ton of information that's out there on the web. It's kind of an exponential growth of just the sheer amount of data that exists out there. And it's how to kind of cut the wheat from the chaff, see what's important for me in terms of, is this claim valid or not? Is there evidence that it is extant out there that I might not otherwise have seen, and otherwise wouldn't have been efficient for me to go send people to look, right? If I'm a partner at a law firm, or myself, spend tons of my own man hours to kind of go find this stuff. These tools can kind of help do that. And no, I don't know if you have anything to add beyond what you just said, because it was already very eloquently put.
Maybe to add more general note about that, we talked about the advantages in using those tools and how they can help us uncovering and filing those litigation. But I think an important stuff to be aware of is even like although they have so much potential, it is important to know how to use them right. Because
Yes,
that's the first time, like I think we can definitely say it's a wave now of litigation using evidence that are not generated but have been discovered and identified using big data and data science. And when you use that tools, you need to be very like aware of the steps you're taking in the analysis and
correct.
criticize about yourself. And if you know to do that, both using the way those tools correctly as we would, and to understand the potential and how the potential can help us where, it's a quick win, definitely.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. Yeah, that's an important thing to note all the time. We see it every week on Law 360, another lawyer getting dinged for filing a brief that has something made up in it.
Yeah,
Do not allow that to happen. And to be clear, what we're discussing is AI pulling what's already out there, right? We're not talking about, hallucinating cases. But it's always good to know how things are gathered and what is extant. So that's a great point. But this stuff, again, it's an opportunity to kind of make everything a little bit more efficient.
sure.
And then allow the lawyers to go out and find the cases and put them in there and kick the tires on those instead of filing the briefs with the hallucinated cases. We've all read the reports on that. Great point. I'll move on. I think we have time for one more. So I'll just read this one now. How do you expect regulatory pressure, corporate climate commitments, new disclosure standards to influence greenwashing litigation in the electricity sector? So this is an interesting question. I'll take it first. Um, you know, Obviously, as more and more of these cases kind of percolate, I think there will be more pressure for the government to act to either determine whether what they're doing in terms of the representations being made with respect to their energy practices are accurate or not, or actionable or not. But also, I think in terms of just the demand for these services from customers. Customers want to, on balance, customers want to try to make the world a better place. And if they believe that, doing things in a carbon neutral way or a renewable way is the way to do that, and all they have to do is pay a little bit of money with their, energy bill every month, I think that's only going to grow. We're kind of in a world, we've seen it the last 5 to 10 years. There's more of a desire in the market for green practices and items that are made, etc. So I only see this as going to be growing in the market, and therefore there almost certainly will be additional claims made by corporations that what they're doing is green, and therefore more scrutiny, not only from the plaintiff's bar to kind of kick the tires on those claims, but also from the government at some point. Though it usually takes a little bit longer for the latter to kick in. But Noah, please, curious to hear your thoughts.
No, what you actually said, I think something just came up to my mind is that usually in greenwashing, other aspects, you can, I don't know, when you're trying to show reliance, people buying a product because it's green. So you go to this McKinsey analysis that's saying 75% of the population will say they will consider environmental benefits when purchasing a laptop, right? But you don't have like the actual number of how many people actually did that. And here in the green utility aspects, of programs, we can actually see how many subscribers there is across the US for this program year by year, and how much this demand is extensively grows, and it's crazily getting bigger and bigger by year. So even just looking at the green utility program as a case study to see how much consumers and the people really want green products, it reflects in the subscription rates of those programs. And to add another small thing about that, in the same breath, we're saying this is emerging litigation sphere.
Right.
I think I think maybe we can say that regulation, consumer regulation, is also on it as an emerging field of greenwashing. And there is slowly, not a big, massive wave still, but some states that mandate utilities companies to disclose in their terms of use of the program that the program is using unbundled RECs. Few states are already demanding that. Not a big thing right now, but maybe it's indicate us what comes next.
Great point. And I know we're pretty much out of time, but I'll end on the general truism of, accurate disclosure is usually a good idea. So I think that'll only continue as a trend. But yes, like I just said, unfortunately we're out of time. Noah, first, thank you for joining today and giving us your thoughts. I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining and spending your valuable time to kind of hear what we have to say about what we see as a new trend in the greenwashing space. So obviously, if there are any additional questions or anything, or you'd like to be in touch in any way, you can feel free to reach us at contact@darrow.ai, which is kind of the general contact email. Or if you have a question for me in particular, my email is patrick.robichaud, Robichaud, at darrow.com. And then Noah, what's your email in case people want to reach out to you?
Don't make me say alphabetic English. No, I'm kidding. Mine is Noa.Bradley, Strudel, Darrow, AI. Same,
Perfect.
everyone's.
All right. Well, this was great. Again, reach out if you have any questions. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you all. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.